Good morning, English 119. This is Grant, and the video this morning I'm going to record is just kind of looking at some key passages. And this is how you should be reading. If there's a passage that's really clear or has something interesting or even something confusing, I find it always good to highlight. So in the online version that you're doing, you should be able to highlight, and that should save with your UNC ID. So when you come back, you'll see those highlights. So the first one I want to show you is on page 26 here, right? And so Greece says here, ironically, however, quote, texts became even more quintessentially objects, inanimate, static, self-contained, and rigidly organized. By comparison with the vital, creative, temporal, subjective, fluid, open-ended features of composing, quote. That's from Phelps, 1988, page 135. Therefore, and I believe this still holds true today, while we think of composing as a process, we still think of composed matter as static, stable things that circulate in the world as fixed entities. Such a perspective reinforces a static model of discourse structure in which we, quote, view meaning as an object contained in the text accessible to a, quote, objective description capable of spatialization and thus open to simultaneous comprehension of all its parts, end quote, 139. As a consequence of this static model, we often refrain from accounting for the constant yet often unpredictable change and movement that discourse experiences. Right? So we want to unpack something like that. And, what she's saying here is, much like you're writing for this unit, right? You're doing these feeders, you're doing smaller parts to get to the whole. We think of writing as that process. You don't sit down and just do the whole thing. You edit, you write in different times. But when we finish something, because, we look at it in kind of this fixed notion, we think it's static, right? We think it's unchanging. But again, if you take, authors don't get to say what their intention is once texts are out in the world. Your text or what you wrote is always changing, depending on who's watching it, who's reading it, when, how, what are the other perspectives, right? It's always changing. And so that's what she's trying to get you to understand here, is that even though you might think, oh, my essay means this, but things always change. So it could mean something else tomorrow or a year from now. All right. So, she says here a little further, in a viral economy in which both intended and unintended audiences play such an interactive role in remixing, appropriating, and spreading images, we know that, quote, delivery is not something so direct or controlled. We also know that digital things are rarely stable in and of themselves. Wikipedia is one clear example, right? People can constantly be editing Wikipedia. That's why, when you cite things, especially on websites, it's important to put the date, because something like a website can be changed all the time. And so, that's a really easy way of seeing, oh, I can someone can modify something. But, in Wikipedia's terms, like, anyone can alter it. And it's the same thing of, like, anyone can provide a reading of a text and disseminate it and contextualize your piece of writing or image or anything else. Okay, so this is going with the same point you made before, just giving you a little more concrete of an example. Okay, so she's talking about rhetorical transformation, which is going to be a key term in this book. She says, I am referring to the process in which things become rhetorical in divergent, unpredictable ways as they circulate, transform, and catalyze change, right? So she's really trying to understand, right? You might intend an image or a piece of writing to mean something, but it starts to mean something different once it's out in the world and people are remixing it. And even those people that remix it, that meaning gets changed when someone else does something, right? And so that's what she's talking about in this. So like the thing power. It has power that's outside of what you intend it to have. It has this life outside of what you thought it would be. Okay, and another example that she gives of this is the Mona Lisa. We're going to be talking about that a lot because it is the most famous painting. But she's talking about how, it didn't really have an audience for the first 100 years it was at the Louvre. But then, because there was travel, people started to see this more, right? And, she's not talking about delivery as let's talk about how all these people got there. She's more concerned of, more people saw it. And as more people saw it, it was able to kind of enter the social consciousness a little more. Okay. So I hope this is helpful of parsing certain parts, right? Using key parts and trying to understand them from a plain English perspective. If someone's not reading this book, how would you explain it to them? So I hope this sort of practice is helpful. As we go through this book, I'm going to be pausing and doing these sorts of videos to help you along the way. So I will see you later today.